Captain Peter Cutsey, South Korea. This is my briefing room. We've just done a missed approach to the RNP runway 08 left at Muscat, and we're on vectors now at 3,400 feet for another approach. So what we'll do is a descent procedure, descent checklist, approach procedure, and approach checklist. And we'll go through with of course, briefing as the last item of the descent procedure. This will be an RNP approach to runway 08 left at Muscat. The chart is 12-1 and the date 26th of April, 2019. The final approach course 084 degrees. It's set on both course windows on the MCP. The minimum altitude by the final fix is 2,200. And the minimum is 325 plus 50 feet as per company SOPs, 375 set on the barometric altimeter. We'll go and have a look at that shortly. So the approach will be as an intercept to ITLAC at 3,400, Mike 07 Whiskey Lima 2,200, minimum 325, call me approaching minimum, and at minimum, at which time I'll call continue or go around. If going around, I'll call go around, set go around thrust as a depressed toga, and we both observe the autothrottle FMA as go around and the pitch reference toga as I'm pitching up to 15 degrees and a go around thrust is set. Flaps 15, positive rate on the barometric altimeter, gear up. Then we'll continue LNAV and climbing as per the instructions on a runway heading to Mike Sierra 700, which is here, and then a left turn to Mike Sierra 705, left turn Mike Sierra 710, left turn Mike Sierra 715, left turn direct to the Muscat VOR to hold at the 6,000 feet on the 084 radial inbound 264 right-hand pattern. Any questions? No questions. All right. Well, there's one note here, a maximum of 220 knots. So let's make sure that the FMC or FMS CDU reflects these same numbers. So we'll go down to the FMC and actually make a selection on the legs page, ITLAC, and here are the points at 3,400 or above, Mike Sierra, I should say Mike 07 Whiskey Lima, 2,200 or above, and through all the other points, and as far as the approach is concerned, 2,200 or above by Mike Sierra 710, 715. So we have the restrictions of 220 knots maximum at all of these points. So that was the runway, and that was the first point and the second point. So the FMS does actually agree. So we're downwind on vectors, and we'll unfreeze the simulator. And we have completed the descent procedure, descent checklist, and the approach procedure and approach checklists. And now we're ready for the approach. We'll configure the flaps 1. We'll open the speed window and set flaps 1 speed. And the speed is reducing. Now we'll call for flaps 5. And set flaps 5 speed. And the speed is reducing to flaps 5 speed. And we're ready for a left turn. We'll advise ATC. So left turn heading 175 degrees. We've got quite a strong tailwind, and the trend vector that we have, the 30-second trend vector, is a great indication actually when it's touching the extended center line for this approach. It would be a good time to turn. However, you're on vector, so if ATC doesn't give you a turn as you're getting close to touching the trend vector on the extended center line, then you would make that inquiry. But the controlling agencies are normally very good. So we'll just have a look at that and see if when it does touch, we'll start our left turn, and then we'll arm LNAV, of course. We've checked the RNP, ANP, and we're constantly checking the lateral RNP and also the vertical when we are in when we get a vertical path later. So we can actually start the turn now. And arm LNAV, and LNAV. Remember, anytime that you push a button switch, you push it as step 1. Step 2, the bar light should come on. Step 3, you should have an indication on the FMA. Everything's done in threes, remember, and that's very important. So we are at flaps 5 speed. And LNAV is not giving us what we want right now, so we had better revert to heading select and do it quickly here. LNAV indicated it was engaged, but it didn't actually take us to that waypoint. We'll try it again. So it is in fact starting a turn. It's indicating engaged. We can set the next altitude here of 2,200 feet. We are in VNAV path and MCP speed, and LNAV seems to be doing what it should be doing. You'll find in the airplane it's fine. The software sometimes acts up a little bit, but it's good because it increases our situational awareness, that we should always be conscious of what's happening with respect. We can see the NPS for the lateral path here, and later on we'll get the NPS for the vertical path here when we actually have a vertical path. And there's top of descent coming up ahead, and we do in fact have the next lower altitude set. And now that we're on the final approach course, we can set the final approach course to agree with the course settings. I'm going to stop the recording and then come back when we get a little closer. So you can now see the vertical path came into view because we're getting close to the top of the descent. We're only 200 feet away. You can see it on the right-hand side, and the RMP is good. The vertical RMP is good, and the lateral RMP is good. This is what we're checking before we can really do the approach or continue the approach. So we're starting our descent to 2,200 feet. There is the descent and in progress. So leaving 3,400 for 2,200 feet. And that could be a call in your SOPs, and it's a common sense type call. Thrust is reducing. The auto throttle is in an MCP mode, an MCP speed mode, and here it is here. There is the open window. Now, if you notice, we're coming up to a 3 nautical mile ring up ahead. Correction, a 2 nautical mile ring that I've introduced on the fixed speed. Let's just pause the. Okay, I've frozen the simulator so we can just talk about this. We're coming up to a point where we have to do basically 7 items. You've heard me mention that before in other briefings. And the 7 items for a non-precision approach at approximately 2 miles before the final descent point is where we are. We have 7 things to do. RNP, ANP, we've checked both the lateral and the vertical, and they're okay. And the MDA should be set. So we're going to set the MDA of, in this case, 400 feet on the MCP, because our minimum was 375. We are V nav path already, and then we will lower the gear and flaps 15 and speed brakes armed and make sure the speed window is open. So those are the 7 items. So I'm going to unfreeze the simulator and we'll talk about them as they're happening, but that was just a little preview. Here we go. So as we mentioned, RNP, ANP, and the MDA set. We're in VNAV path, gear down, and flaps 15. Set flaps 15 speed. And speed brakes armed, and the speed window is open. And if you notice, we are in our descent and we're on the navigational performance scale vertical path indicator. And also we are lined up on the lateral path indicator. This is not the localizer. This is not the glide slope. This is not an ILS. Remember, 2,500. 2,500, radio altimeter alive, good call. And at that point, if we had the actual VSD, we should have one pilot to be on VSD and confirming. We don't have a terrain map in this software, but that's what it would look like if you were using it. Now we can go back to center, and the first officer is in normal mode. So you can actually have a look at the missed approach path. So we're 2,200 feet. We're coming up to our point, 2,200 or above, and we made good of that, and we're continuing in our descent to MTA. So when we go by the final fix, there are a lot of things we have to do. Let's just pause the freeze the simulator. Remember, when you go by the final fix, you should be doing, it's your final chance to ensure that your barometric altimeter is correct and that you have a good look at the surface wind from tower, and you've got your wind here. And if there's quite a difference between the surface wind from tower and your windsock on the nav display, you can expect wind shear. And remember, if we were really in a super cold environment, such as minus 35 or so at the field, we would have made adjustments to that RMP altitude, corrections, cold weather corrections. Otherwise, we'd be very low. Our radio altimeter would be indicating something that is different than what it should be. So when you're going by the final approach fix, you're checking baro against radio altitude. And if you have VSD, you're certainly checking your VSD with respect to terrain and to ensure that in fact you have the correct altimeter setting. All right, let's continue. And now we can configure for landing flap. We plan to use flap 30. VREF is 149, so 149 plus 5 is 144. So speed set at 144. Correction 154, which is VREF plus 5. There are no gusts, so that's the figure we're going to stay with. And then the missed approach altitude could be set when we're 300 feet below the missed approach altitude and at 6,000 feet, as per the briefing, set, and then call for the landing checklist. Landing checklist should be completed before 1,000 feet. So we go through the landing checklist and we'll say the landing checklist is complete. So all we have to do now is fly the airplane. And this, we're just going to pause, freeze the simulator. The reason why I painted a 2 nautical mile ring is that the FMC needs 2 nautical miles to get all set up in a configuration. And also, when we come out of the 2 nautical mile on the other side, which we're at now, that can be a double check that we haven't forgotten to set our missed approach altitude. That's airmanship. So that's what is something to think about. That's not written in Boeing's books. It could be written as part of SOPs, depending on your company. We're moving again. We'll go down to minimums and have a look outside, or at approaching minimums, have a look outside. And then we'll freeze the simulator, and then that will be the end of this video. So everything is the way it should be. MCP speed, LNAV, VNAV path, the map looks good, and we would have pause selected so that we would have the picture on the tip of the aircraft symbol to indicate that's a picture of the GPS updates, and if not the IRS updates, to make sure that the map in fact is correct. And I strongly suggest that you always have pause selected. It's not visible in this setting. 1,000
feet
stabilized. Okay, we're carrying on. Everything looked good at 1,000 feet. And we can see our minimum selector on the altitude tape coming up. So as we approach close to 100 feet above, the pilot monitoring would call approaching minimums, and then he will call minimums. Check.
Approaching minimums.
Okay, we'll freeze the sim and we'll go out and have a boo and see what it looks like. There we are, looking good.
Minimums.
And there is minimums. So we've frozen the simulator. We're right in the slot, so to speak. And that will end this video. In the next video, we'll actually conduct our go-around procedure and the missed approach. Thank you for watching.